Hello, you're watching Race to Power. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Let's tell you what we are going to be telling you as far as this entire, Voting Powers Act is concerned. Remember, the United States Supreme Court has said that it will be, talking about what the redistricting battle has been going on between Republicans and Democrats and the effect of what the top court of the country has said, that it's made it tougher for the minorities to challenge the electoral map as racially discriminatory under the Civil Rights Act. What does this mean and what are its implications? We are decoding for you tonight. And we're also telling you why Israel's compulsory military service continues to face a pushback from ultra-Orthodox Jews. But first, let's talk about what the United States Supreme Court has said. In what is being called a landmark judgment by the U.S. Supreme Court, it will now be tougher for the minorities in America to challenge the electoral map as racially discriminatory under the Civil Rights Act. Let's give you a context to this. The Voting Rights Act, remember, is often touted as the crown jewel of the U.S. civil rights movement. The law prohibits electoral maps which could undermine the clout of minority voters. This led to the use of race-conscious data in redistricting to protect the voting power of minorities and ensure their representation. But the provision now stands diluted as the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Louisiana's electoral map, which aimed to create an additional black majority district. This decision is being hailed by the Republicans, while the Democrats are planning to challenge it.
Today's decision by this illegitimate Supreme Court majority strikes a blow against the Voting Rights Act and is designed to undermine the ability of communities of color all across this country to elect their candidate of choice. But we're not here to step back, we're here to fight back.
Now, one side in America is calling race-conscious redistricting as racist, while the other side calls it an important tool to provide electoral power in the hands of minorities. The former U.S. President Barack Obama criticized this ruling, saying it will systematically weaken the voting power of racial minorities. On the other hand, Donald Trump hailed the ruling and called it a big win for equal protection under the law. The Supreme Court's decision, remember, comes amid ongoing redistricting battle where Republicans and Democrats have been trying to redraw electoral maps in their strongholds to get additional seats in the Congress.
I would. I mean, it depends. I mean, some states don't need to redraw, and some do. I mean, I know what the concept of the rule. I just haven't seen the result. Yeah, I would say generally I would think that they would want to do it. Some are greatly helped, and some, it didn't make much difference. Yeah, I would say they would do that. They have time to do it.
America, remember, heads to the midterm elections in November this year, when Republicans will try to save their majority. Thin one, but they will try to save it. While the Democrats are trying to flip the balance of power at the Capitol, both sides have been trying to achieve their aims by changing the electoral maps. The question is, whom will it help? So that's the latest as far as, this entire legal battle is concerned. Extremely important ruling that has come out of America's top court. And what are its implications, not just as far as minority representation is concerned, but also the political implications of it. Which side will it help in the midterm elections? Remember, this is coming just a few months ahead of the midterm elections. Republicans are hailing it. The Democrats are planning to challenge it, clearly sensing that they might be at the receiving end, negatively, of this entire exercise that is being carried out in multiple states. But Donald Trump, as we showed you, has hailed this. How the Democrats now plan to challenge this, how they plan to take this forward, is something that we'll have to wait and see. But as far as this entire redistricting is concerned, Just a few weeks back, remember, Virginia was a state where redistricting happened, and it was a setback for the Republicans. So it's really an interesting battle that is going on at the moment. Let's try and get a better understanding of what this means. I'm joined by Mr. Richard William Painter, American lawyer and professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. He's joining us live from Minnesota at the moment. Mr. Painter, good evening. Welcome to WION. Before I get into the political implications of it, I want to understand from you how you read this ruling as far as minority representation is concerned, because there have been several people who have voiced their opinions and concerns about minority representation being reduced because of this ruling.
Yes, this ruling probably will reduce minority representation, principally African Americans from some of the states in the South. The concern here is that the Supreme Court of the United States generally has been unwilling to intervene with respect to gerrymandered electoral maps. And yet in this case involving the Voting Rights Act, the Supreme Court struck down the map in question. And so the Supreme Court is very selectively intervening with respect to the drawing of legislative districts. What the Supreme Court really needs to do is make it clear that gerrymandering, whether it's racial gerrymandering or any other type of gerrymandering, is unacceptable. We have these districts in the United States, in several states, that really make absolutely no sense, and they're simply designed in order to maximize the election of particular party members to the United States Congress, and that's of course the party that controls the state legislature and the governorship. We've seen Texas do it, Illinois do it, California do it, Virginia do it, now Florida wants to get in the act, and some of these states are Democratic controlled states, some are Republican controlled states, but the Supreme Court has refused to do anything to deal with the gerrymandering problem in the United States, which is a fundamental threat to our democracy. And then the Supreme Court just suddenly jumps in and intervenes in this one case where minority representation is at stake in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And that's very concerning.
Let me also get from you an understanding of how you see the political implications of this, because, the midterms are around, Republicans have welcomed this, the Democrats are planning to challenge this. There has been a change in the way minorities vote as well. Historically, they were voting for the Democrats, but in the 2024 presidential election, we did see some of those communities incline towards the Republicans. Therefore, how do you see the political implication of this ruling?
Well, we'll see how this sorts out. There are going to be other states as well that may be affected, but we should keep in mind that this gerrymandering war we've had is one that both sides can play. And so the Democrats have gerrymandered California now and Virginia in response to the Republicans having started the most recent round of gerrymandering down in Texas. And so we're going to have both political parties trying to manipulate the system when they draw the legislative districts. Districts are going to make less and less sense. Voters who are thrust into these districts, whether Democratic or Republican, are going to be alienated from the system and think that it's designed not to assure that they are represented, but to enhance a particular political party's representation in Washington. This will lead to more voter disaffection, whether it's minority voters or other voters. And it's really very dangerous for our democracy.
So the Democrats are planning to challenge this decision, Mr. Painter. One, what are their options? And two, what is the likelihood of the next verdict going in their favor?
Well, I think it's going to be very hard to challenge this decision. The Supreme Court is the highest court. They've made their decision. They could try to get new legislation through Congress, but President Trump will not sign it. What we really need to do is make gerrymandering a national issue. It's a threat to democracy, and to convince grassroots voters in both political parties that the manipulation of the political map of legislative districts to maximize a particular party's representation in Congress rather than the representation of the people in the district is a threat to democracy. And the conservative voters and liberal voters alike Democrats and Republicans should reject it, and we should pass legislation that would prohibit gerrymandering of districts across the country. It is a serious problem.
All right, we'll leave it there. Mr. Richard Painter, thanks very much for joining us on WION and giving us this understanding.
Thank you.
All right, let's also tell you how the United States is now heading for a high-stakes clash over U.S. President Donald Trump's war against Iran. Remember, Trump is legally bound to seek approval from the Congress if he wants to carry on with Operation Epic Fury beyond the 1st of May. The clock is ticking for Trump. The U.S. Congress, under the War Powers Resolution, puts a 60-day deadline for any military operation that does not have congressional approval. Now, this puts the focus back on the Capitol Hill, where Democrats are preparing to corner the U.S. president. This could be the strongest opportunity for the Democrats to pose a serious challenge to Trump's war on Iran. According to a report published by The Time, Democrats are planning to sue Donald Trump if he tries to ignore the Congress on this particular issue. For nearly 8 weeks, remember, the Republicans have thwarted Democratic efforts to terminate military operation in Iran. But now they're planning to take a legal route as well. The 60-day deadline comes as Operation Epic Fury enters a critical stage. According to Axios, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper is set to present a new battle plan before Donald Trump. The plan could potentially involve further military action in Iran to force it into a nuclear deal of Washington's choice. Donald Trump, who relies on ultimatums, is now facing one himself. But remember, historically, several American presidents have engaged in prolonged military conflicts without formal declaration of war. So even if Trump goes down that path, a legal battle seems inevitable over the limits of his war powers versus those of the Congress. Our correspondent Susan Tehrani is joining us live on the broadcast from New York. Susan, this is just a few hours away that we are from the 1st of May when that deadline occurs. Donald Trump clearly facing that mounting challenge. The 60-day period is ending, but he also has the option of extending it for 30 more days. The only condition in that extension is to assure the Congress that you will end the war or at least withdraw your troops. Is that assurance coming in from Donald Trump?
So we're just getting report that the White House is in active conversation with congressional leaders about this War Powers Act. However, as you mentioned, this act that is federal law has a history where presidents really don't abide by it strictly. And they believe that it limits the authority of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces as U.S. president. But nonetheless, a White House official says that not only is the president and the White House in active conversation with congressional leaders, but ultimately that the White House prefers the path to diplomacy rather than war, and they believe that Iran is ready to make a deal. They also pointed out that until now they have not broken any federal law because on the onset of the war, the White House did inform congressional leaders that this operation was going to take place. So that's coming from the White House. However, it's not clear whether or not President Trump wants to go to Congress to get this reauthorization for the continuation of this war. But I also want to say it's noteworthy that congressional leaders also and members of Congress and also the Senate, they try to shy away from voting on wars in general. So it's not like they're really eager to pass this as well, because they will go on record regarding this war. And as we saw, for example, in the Iraq war, once you go on record, that's going to really be either to your benefit or to your detriment, depending on the direction that the war goes.
And historically, we have seen that the U.S. Congress hasn't really given that formal official approval of declaring a war against any country. But we'll have to wait and see how this moves forward. The 1st of May is that deadline. Susan, thanks very much for joining us at the moment. All right, let's shift our focus now to Israel, where the country's mandatory military service rule is now facing a pushback from ultra-Orthodox Jews. The anger, remember, centers around a Supreme Court ruling that seeks to end the exemption that is granted to ultra-Orthodox Jews regarding compulsory military service in Israel. In opposition to this, ultra-Orthodox Jews are organizing protests at regular intervals. In the latest, a group of Jewish ultra-Orthodox people carried out anti-conscription protests in Jerusalem. They tried to storm the house of Israel's military police chief. The group was protesting against moves to punish those who refuse to answer conscription call-ups.
Nazi! Nazi!
This protest is against the draft. It is unacceptable what they are doing to yeshiva students as if they were the worst criminals. We are not the worst criminals. We have done nothing against the law. All we want is to sit and study Torah.
Israel's High Court has ordered the state to cut financial benefits to ultra-Orthodox Jews who dodge being drafted and to start criminal proceedings against them. The protest drew furious condemnation from the top brass of Israel's military and the political establishment. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu called it a brutal and violent attack against the head of the military police. Defense Minister Israel Katz, meanwhile, said any attempt to harm the members of the security forces is crossing a red line. Exemption from compulsory national service to ultra-Orthodox men who engage in full-time religious study dates back to 1948. However, the Supreme Court has repeatedly challenged the exemption in the recent years. In 2024, it ruled that the government must conscript ultra-Orthodox men. Now, with this latest ruling, the court is effectively ordering the removal of subsidies granted to the ultra-Orthodox that give them reduced rates for local taxes, public transport, and childcare. A South African court has ordered the youngest son of Zimbabwe's former president, Robert Mugabe, to pay a large fine and be deported for pointing a toy gun at someone and breaking immigration laws. 28-year-old Bellarmine Mugabe has been in custody since mid-February this year alongside his cousin and co-accused Tobias Mattenhodze after being implicated in the shooting of a gardener following an altercation. While Bellarmine Mugabe pleaded guilty to pointing a toy gun in a separate incident, his cousin pleaded guilty in the case in which a worker was shot. Previously, Mugabe was also charged with attempted murder, but after Mattenhodze pleaded guilty, the charge was dropped. The court's decision came following a failed plea deal by Mugabe, who admitted to being in South Africa illegally. The court fined Mugabe $36,000 on 2 counts. It also ordered his immediate deportation with the police to escort him till Johannesburg or the Tambo International Airport.
Number one, as far as count 5 is concerned, you are fined to 400,000 rands or 24 months imprisonment. As far as count 6 is concerned, that's the immigration law, 49, section 49(1)(a. You are fined 200,000 rands or 18 months imprisonment. It is also ordered that you be deported. You will be escorted by the investigating officer who is here at court today and who must be complimented for that.
On the other hand, co-accused Tobias Mattenhodze pleaded guilty to attempted murder and other charges such as defeating the ends of justice. Mattenhodze has been sentenced to 3 years in prison, after which he will be deported. Bellarmine Mugabe, meanwhile, remember, is one of the 2 sons that Robert Mugabe had with his second wife, Grace. The 2 brothers have at times lived in Johannesburg, where they have gained a reputation for living the high life. Robert Mugabe ruled Zimbabwe for almost 4 decades until he was deposed in a coup in 2017. Our correspondent Kalden Ongmu has sent us this report from Johannesburg. Take a look.
South Africans say they are not surprised that Bellarmine Mugabe avoided jail with a fine, while his cousin Tobias Mugabe Mattenhodze will serve 3 years. Some believe Mattenhodze took the blame. Mugabe, son of former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, paid nearly $37,000 fine and was deported immediately after admitting to being in South Africa illegally and pointing a toy gun in a separate, unrelated incident. Matondze pleaded guilty to attempted murder and will be deported after serving his sentence. This is Calden Omo from Johannesburg, South Africa for WION World is One.
Myanmar's junta leader turned president has ordered a blanket reduction in prisoner sentences, and this move has impacted the deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi as well, whose sentence has been reduced by 1/6 now. Suu Kyi, remember, has been in military detention since 2021 after a military coup in February 5 years ago. Junta leaders had toppled Suu Kyi's democratically elected government and imprisoned the 80-year-old leader. Her allies called the detention politically motivated. China has raised concerns over the deposed leader's imprisonment and has called for enduring reconciliation within Myanmar.
Regarding Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit to Myanmar, we have already issued relevant information. Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi is an old friend of China, and we have always been concerned about her situation. As a friendly neighbor, China supports Myanmar in pursuing a development path that is in line with its national conditions and supports all parties in Myanmar in achieving broader, more solid, and more enduring peace and reconciliation.
Suu Kyi was earlier given a prison sentence for 33 years, which was later reduced to 27. Now, the latest decision to trim the prison sentences reduces her time behind the bars to 18 years. Her family has warned of her health deteriorating inside the prison, as little details are released in public of her well-being. All right, shifting our focus now, Colombia is witnessing a surge in violence ahead of the national elections. Incidents of car explosions have skyrocketed in the country, fueling fears of rise in violence after a decade of peace agreement with armed rebels. Colombia, remember, goes to polls on the 31st of May, but just before people head to the ballot box, a bomb explosion in the country's southwest killed 21 people. Dissident guerrillas from Colombia's Central General Command took responsibility for the attack and called it a tactical error. The group is led by Ivan Mordisco, who is Colombia's most wanted criminal suspect. EMC broke away from now defunct FARC rebel group after it laid down arms in a historic peace agreement in 2016. President Gustavo Petro has called the incident a terrorist attack and asserted that it aimed to sabotage the elections. In fact, he's accused Ecuador's right-wing president, Daniel Noboa, of stirring up violence in Colombia. Petro is constitutionally barred from running for a second consecutive term. His political heir, Senator Ivan Cepeda, is currently leading in the polls, with right-wing candidates Abelardo and Paloma Valencia challenging him for the top post. In Chile, thousands of students took to the streets protesting planned cuts to education spending under President José Antonio Cast. These demonstrations, sparked by the government's austerity measures, quickly turned chaotic as protesters clashed with the police. Carabineros, Chile's national police force, deployed tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowds. These are the images showing multiple water cannon trucks blasting students at close range, while others showed a young demonstrator being detained. The anger among the youth population has been building over a series of proposed reforms. These include limiting access to free higher education, scrapping the Becas Chile scholarship, and tightening oversight of student loans. Students say these measures could weaken education and hurt the economy. Cast was sworn in as president last month. He campaigned on a free market agenda inspired by Argentina's Javier Milei and an anti-immigrant stance reminiscent of President Donald Trump's. After taking charge, he pleaded to slash public spending by $6 billion, which is equivalent to 2% of the GDP within 18 months. So as an initial step, the government ordered a 3% cut across ministries. In education, this included scrapping a food stipend for poorer students, though the decision was later reversed after criticism. Plans to limit free university spots for new students, over 30, were also floated, but they were ultimately dropped. Fearing that the government may only be making a temporary retreat, students have continued to rally in defense of the education funding. Chile's student movement has long been a powerful force, leading major protests over the past 2 decades. All right, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Bye-bye.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
No SUV is too big here. No adventure motorcycle too advanced. Man's ego is of no use in Ladakh. To drive here is to see your life in perspective. To be reminded that there's always time.
Then I figured that if not now, when?
To take the long way. To define your own life.
I keep on reminding myself, why did you leave your job? Don't make this your job.
Coming up this week on WION Drive at these times.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION. World is One. 5 states, 1 powerful voice. From Tamil Nadu to West Bengal. From Kerala to Assam. Every vote shapes the future. Get the election pulse only on WION. WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Beyond Fine Print. I'm Dharamjot Kaur. A host of stories lined up ahead, but first, the headlines. Iran says it will respond with long and painful strikes on US positions if Washington renews attacks. Reasserts its control over the Strait of Hormuz as US plans for a coalition to reopen the crucial waterway. President Donald Trump criticizes German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, says he should focus on fixing his broken country first and spend less time on interfering with the effort to tackle Iran's nuclear threat. Protesters heckle UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer as he arrives in North London a day after an attacker stabbed two men in the street. Demonstrators shout slogans and call him a traitor. Chanakya exit poll predicts the Bharatiya Janata Party is set to get over 200 seats in West Bengal, while the DMK-led alliance is set for a comfortable win in Tamil Nadu.